This is Jean Newell with your Hometown Solutions. What an exciting show we have today. We have flown in at no expense to us of representatives from FEMA and the Small Business Administration. And in studios with me today is Jonathan Lack, my co-host. Welcome back, Jonathan Lack.
Thank you for having me back.
And
Jean.
we have some great guests that's going to talk about all the things you know about disasters, emergency care, all the things that you wonder about and you don't know who to get in contact with. But before we introduce our guests, Jonathan Lack, we always like to make sure that people know what you represent, what we're doing here. We're kind of pulling the curtain away as consumer advocates for real estate professionals as well as for the consumers. All the things that perhaps they don't know that when it comes up, you need to know about real estate. And we kind of kiddingly say that we cover everything from foreclosures to Feng Shui. But you represent three different companies, Jonathan. Tell us a little bit about the three companies that you represent that real estate people need to know about, as well as our consumers.
Well, Jean, I'm a real estate attorney with Lack & Lack Chartered, and we can be reached at area code 321-953-5115 or on the web at lacklaw.com. That's LACKLAW.com. Also, the owner and operator of Waterview Title Services and owner-broker for Waterview Realty Services. So our goal here on the show is to educate consumers regarding anything and everything to do with real estate transactions.
Exactly. Well, a few weeks ago, we had a hurricane come through here named Matthew.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And we, a lot of people call us because they want to know what to do, how to, where do we go? How do we get a loan? What do we, they think we know everything, which I always tell people, that I have all the answers. I just don't know what questions they go to. But anyway, we get a lot of information, people ask us this information and we thought, why not bring the experts on about what FEMA does and what the Small Business Administration does. And exactly what you need to know, no matter if you're living in Florida, you're living in New Jersey, out in Oklahoma, there's always some kind of a situation where that state might have some kind of disaster that you need to know about. And since we are coast to coast, we want to make this program generic enough that you know what you need to do if there's a disaster in your area that affects your real estate. So, without further ado, let me introduce you to John Mills with FEMA, and Doris Evans with she's a public affairs specialist, and she's with the Florida Disaster Loans for the business of all sizes, private, nonprofits, homeowners, and renters, and that's the SBA. Welcome, both of you, to our show, Your Hometown Solutions.
Hey, Jean, thanks for having me.
Hi, Jean. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So let's start it right off. Let's talk with John Mills from FEMA. A lot of people ask me, what is FEMA? What is it, and what does it do, and how do we get in touch with it? Let's start it right off.
So, as you know, Florida was hit by two hurricanes, Hurricane Hermine, and then followed very soon after that by Hurricane Matthew. So FEMA was very busy coordinating across all the federal agencies, along with County Emergency Operations Center and the state of Florida. So we're in a number of the counties before, during, and after the storm, and then working very closely with the state of Florida on doing a disaster response. So first we had Hurricane Hermine, and we were able to provide more than $7 million to individual homeowners and renters for their home repairs, rental assistance, and other needs not covered by insurance, and then followed that up with Hurricane Matthew that hit the east coast of Florida, and we've provided about $15 million in individual assistance for homeowners and renters affected by that storm. And we're still working with local communities on long-term recovery projects, debris removal, emergency protective measures, restoring damaged roads, public facilities, and parks that were damaged by both of those hurricanes. But we've had a lot of good progress supporting the local communities in the state of Florida.
Speaking of roads, though, we see the pictures up there in the St. Augustine area where A1A basically collapsed. So FEMA comes in and helps with the road repairs on that with the city, or how is that affected?
It all depends on who owns the road. So in that case, that's a different funding source. There's some other federal money involved, is my understanding. But say you have a city-owned public park, a city-owned road, city hall is damaged, FEMA can pay 75% of cost to restore damaged public infrastructure to its pre-disaster condition. So even if your home is not damaged specifically by the storm, that 75% federal share can help lessen the burden on the local community if they have serious infrastructure damage related to a natural disaster.
So right now, people should write out this and stick it on their refrigerator or somewhere they know where they can go to get this information. What is the website or your phone number that they need to have handy should they come into a situation like a hurricane brewing, or they live in the Northeast and they have a big snowstorm pending or something like that they need to know about FEMA?
So what I would suggest to stay prepared for the storm is to go to ready.gov. ready.gov. And no matter where you live in the country, ready.gov will give you a wide variety of scenarios that can help your family prepare for the storm or for the earthquake, for the tornado, for whatever type of disaster may affect you and your family. So you can find checklists of, we need 3 days of food and water on hand for every member of the household, tips like that. It can help you make a family communications plan. If a tornado hits and I'm in one part of town and my wife and children are in the other part of town, where are we going to meet? How are we going to talk to each other if cell phone service is down? So you get a lot of information like that on ready.gov. So that's a good resource for people. And then the FEMA website, which also runs FEMA, ready.gov, is just FEMA.gov, and you can read all about FEMA on there. But ready.gov is really a good place for people to go to get prepared for a storm.
Well, that's excellent information. I like to keep some of our show basic because the audience, our goal is to educate them. And I'm going to go real basic and ask you to tell us what FEMA stands for.
It stands for the Federal Emergency Management Agency.
Oh.
So emergency management. A lot of you will have county emergency managers, and they'll work with the state emergency management. So, if your house catches on fire, you call the fire department, you call 911. You would still do that if you need emergency assistance. When a hurricane hits or a major disaster happens, the counties reach out through mutual aid, they reach out to the state, and if the disaster is so severe that the governor of the state wants FEMA to come in, the governor of the state makes that request. So that's what typically happens. So in Florida, what we're doing is encouraging people who are in designated areas that are affected by Hurricane Matthew and by Hurricane Hermine to register with FEMA for assistance at 1-800-621-3362. That's 800-621-FEMA. You can also register online at disasterassistance.gov. That's how you get into the system to potentially be eligible for grant money that you would not have to repay. And you heard some of the numbers of people who have already received assistance. Now, if you live in another part of the country and a fire happens, you should call 911. You should not contact FEMA for assistance. You will learn through your local media, which you should, of course, monitor during those storms, as you always do, about whether your area has been designated for FEMA assistance. You will be told by local officials, the media, and by FEMA through the media. So don't just call FEMA to register for assistance, okay? But if you live in a designated area, and we're working in Florida, we're working in Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, that were all affected by the hurricane in 2016 to work long-term in those communities.
Right. And I also like to point out that our show is broadcast here from the east coast of Florida, east central Florida, Brevard County. So, of course, we were directly affected by Hurricane Matthew, as were many other areas. And our show is being broadcast now here at the end of November of 2016. So if you're listening to this show unarchived and it's sometime later, then this may be stale information. But for those of you who are either listening live or imminently, it is very important to be aware that there are deadlines for applications for assistance. So we want to make sure if you are listening and you have been affected by Hurricane Matthew or Hurricane Hermine, and that you may be in need of assistance, it's important that you know those deadlines. And John, can you help?
So, those deadlines are right upon us. So if you have not registered already with FEMA, do not delay. Call 800-621-3362 if you live in a designated area in Florida affected by Hurricane Matthew or by Hurricane Hermine. A lot of people have already gotten damage inspections. They've already registered with FEMA. So we're really encouraging people also, even beyond the registration deadline, to stay in touch with FEMA. So as you know, you've seen a whole community response to Hurricane Matthew. You've seen local responders, those first responders doing amazing work. You've seen charitable and faith-based groups out in the communities immediately helping out. I saw one group came from Tennessee, and they were making home repairs even before the disaster had been declared. So those groups are vital to communities.
I would like to say to our listeners out there that we do live in a wonderful country and a wonderful world where it's a shame that disasters are sometimes the kick in the butt we need to help each other out. But I've lived through a number of these hurricanes over the years, and I'm always heartwarmed to see that neighbors helping neighbors is a real thing.
Yeah, and you can't say enough about that. And then FEMA can come in to be part of the team to provide some assistance to people affected by the storms.
All right, John. Well, that's great information regarding FEMA. And one of the things I know is, of course, you apply online or you register, I guess it is, with FEMA, and that way you secure what you might need. But then, like most things, it comes down to money. And I understand that there are sometimes grants available, and then there's sometimes loans through SBA that may be available. So can you tell us a little about that?
Right. So FEMA can provide some grant money for basic home repairs, temporary rental assistance, and other needs not covered by insurance. FEMA also funds the National Flood Insurance Program. So here in Florida, FEMA has already provided tens of millions of dollars in flood insurance claims as well. But some people have no insurance. Some people don't have the right kind of insurance, and it can cover different things, and everyone's situation is unique. So when a disaster is declared at the federal level, FEMA handles every household on a case-by-case basis because everyone's exact situation is unique. And Doris can tell you more about what the Small Business Administration does, because when you hear business, right, you think only businesses, but not after hurricanes like this.
Right. So Doris, we have Doris Evans here with the Small Business Administration, and she's with the Office of Disaster Assistance. So I have spoken on other shows actually about the SBA and SBA loans available to commercial enterprises and starting their businesses up, but this is a different animal. This is available both to businesses as well as to homeowners in connection with disasters. And Doris, can you tell us a little more about that?
Yes, I can. The SBA, the Office of Disaster Assistance, that's a good way to start with it because it's actually the Office of Disaster Assistance. And SBA is part of the long-term recovery when we have disasters such as Hurricane Hermine and Hurricane Matthew. For survivors who don't have enough insurance or they don't have any insurance at all. And SBA has been around for a very long time. It offers low-interest loans at a very good interest rate, and the terms are very, lengthed out to help survivors' recovery. The types of loans that SBA offer they offer business loans for businesses of any size, any types, or any kind. That loan amount can go up to $2 million, depending upon what the business owner has lost. And the next, we have nonprofits. They're also eligible to borrow up to $2 million for disaster assistance. Then we get into the homeowners. Homeowners are eligible to borrow up to $200,000, and that includes $40,000. That does not include the $40,000 for personal property losses. Then we get into renters, where they may not be a homeowner, but they may have been renting and they may have lost their personal property, and they're eligible to borrow up to $40,000, depending upon what the disasters are.
I think that's the confusion. People they think FEMA will come in and give you money to repair things. Well, that's grant money, but what's the difference between how someone would qualify for grant money or do they need to get a loan? Where do you draw the line?
So the easiest way to look at it is if the governor requests a federal disaster declaration that includes assistance for individuals, homeowners and renters, we'll encourage people to register with FEMA for assistance for needs not already covered by insurance or other programs. So you may be able to receive money from FEMA for basic home repairs, temporary rental assistance if you have to live somewhere else temporarily for a month or two while repairs are made, and other needs such as repairing or replacing personal property that's been damaged or destroyed. But if you think about FEMA grant money in terms of taking